Listen.
Hi, good afternoon, and welcome today. I'm Peter Neufeld and part of the HR team here at Maple Leaf. Normally on Wednesdays, or on many of these Wednesdays, we've been getting together and having the Healthy Minds speaker series. That's where we've been bringing in different experts, and then an open Q&A, and we've heard from a range of speakers. Well, today we're going to be doing something a bit different, and I'm super excited about it. So to kick it off and tell you more about it, I'm going to pass it over now to Josh Kuhnbaum, who is our Senior Vice President of Food Service. So Josh, over to you.
Me an opportunity to participate today. I have, as background, just quick background, is I've worked at Maple time. I really didn't know much about what Maple Leaf was or what the organization stood for. Candidly, the culture and DNA of the company was not something that was really prevalent in my thinking as a youngster coming out of school. At that time, I was really just focused on getting a job and paying down some debt and maybe buying a TV or something. Fast forward now 23 years, and I am simply in awe, wow, of the organization that we are and that the organization that we strive to become. You don't really have to look much further than the blueprint to see what we aspire to be, but really beyond the blueprint and beyond how we show up externally, what really separates the organization for me in my mind, and where I'm really in awe of how we genuinely care about our people. It's by far what I'm most grateful for being an employee of Maple Leaf. To be simple, I believe, feel strongly we work for a company and a leader in Michael who cares, and thank goodness for that, because we're in a world that needs people to care. This shows up in many ways, like our ERG groups, Multican, WIN, Pride, and Allies, but also around the focus we put around the mental health of our employees through the You Are Not Alone series and other examples and illustrations of that. The topic of mental health is something that's deeply personal for me. I grew up in a family where mental health illness created several challenges for my father. It impacted his quality of life, his ability to work, and also our life at home. As an adult, I've also experienced similar challenges around mental health firsthand, not just as it relates to my own anxiety and how I show up, but also for those that I love the most in my life, including two daughters who both have very active minds and deal with anxiety on an ongoing basis. All that to say, mental health and quality of life is something that's a big focus for me and something I'm very mindful about, think about it daily. As part of my personal experience here at Maple Leaf, I've had very positive interactions and experiences with several of the support tools that we have in place, things like Inkblot and financial support for therapists and appointments and things like that. And for that, I'm very fortunate to not just have the support in those tools, but support from colleagues and leaders and other friends and family in the Maple Leaf organization. I'm very grateful for that opportunity. The personal growth and comfort it has brought to me and the loved ones in my family, and I feel super privileged to have an opportunity to participate in this panel today. My goal is to help others as much as possible. And frankly, today, what I'm really excited to do is to hear from the others on the panel who are set in a nice position to share some of their experiences. And selfishly, I'm eager to continue to learn from all of you, including many of those members on the panel. So before we go much further, I'd like to just say thanks, Peter, for giving us an opportunity to set this up and participate, and turn it over to the panel group.
Thanks so much, Josh, and thanks for your leadership and openness today. Folks, it's been really interesting. So we've been amazed and encouraged since we've been running these series to be hearing from people. And we've been inspired by hearing from people external from our organization as they've shared mental health experiences. But you have already opened up through your questions in terms of how mental health has impacted you yourself. Today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be hearing from people across the organization who are courageously coming forward to share their story for the good of others. And our objective today is really twofold. The big objective is looking at helping people to recognize that you are not alone. As Josh said, this is really, really critical. And we know that no matter what kind of mental health support you get, feeling of isolation can make things much worse and is actually the antithesis of getting better. The other part is to break down the stigma. People often have a stigma of what mental health issues look like and who has mental health issues, and that can hold people back from communicating. And so the people here today are the ones who are willing to come forward with their faces and their stories, and I'm just so thankful for them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask each of you on the panel to just briefly introduce yourself. Then what we're going to do is I'm going to ask a few questions. We'll go through some time in terms of doing a Q&A. And then at the end, we'll have 10 minutes where we're going to open things up and you can ask them questions. So if you have questions, you can think of them already, and we'll have them using the question icon. So I'm going to start with you, Bindu. Can you introduce yourself and just say a few words, and we'll go through each person on the panel.
Sure. Thanks, Peter. So my name is Bindu Gupta. I work for, I'm a project manager in the information solutions area, and I'm really glad to be here today because I know that I'm probably not alone in all the things I felt during the COVID break and just over time in the last 8 months. But really happy to be here today and share my stories.
Great. Thanks, Bindu. And Jenny.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jennifer Malcolmson, Jenny. I'm currently the Labor Relations Manager. I work with Desi Singh and his team, and currently supporting our Prepared Meats plants. I've been with the organization for a little over 17 years, and I'm very thankful to be on this call. So I'm looking forward to it, Peter. Thank you.
Great, thanks. And Judy.
Hi, I'm Judy Jacobs. I manage the quality and safety programs for our technical services laboratories. That's part of the FSQUATS team. I've been with Maple Leaf for 8 years now. And yeah, I'm excited to share my story and let everybody know they're not alone.
Great, thanks. And Mike.
Hi, I'm Mike Correa. I've been here nearly 30 years. In fact, I remember Josh's first day actually coming on as an LT. I'm looking forward just to talking to you guys about mental health and then share some stories and importantly, how proud I am to actually have been part of this organization over the last number of years as I've gone through my own mental health journeys and maybe share some stories and inspire some confidence that the people we work with are the right people that can help us on a day-to-day basis and how we feel, and that these things are actually quite normal.
Perfect. So Mike, let's open up, and I'd like to actually start with you. When did you first recognize that you might be struggling or have a mental health challenge? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, I was told probably about 20 years ago I had issues, but I first recognized it around 12 years ago. And some of you can associate with our company around 12 years ago. For me, I mean, in the 30 years I've been at the company, I've had the luxury and maybe the opportunity to work in roles where daily fires and pressure have been a mainstay of what I've been engaged in. In fact, that's really what I've loved about being at Maple Leaf and the roles that I've been in is, you know, not really knowing what's going to happen tomorrow, next week, and the ability to react and deal with those things. I've enjoyed being a firefighter or a planner around that. But about 12 years ago, and it was actually quite suddenly, I began having some new issues. And really for me, it was around fear and sadness and worry. And my world started to feel smaller and smaller, and I described it as actually as watching myself through a small pipe and feeling disengaged from the things around me, or even almost to a sense standing back and watching myself from above. Just getting through the day for a lot of years actually was becoming very difficult, even to the extent where I drive into the office and maybe sit in the car for 15 minutes to try to find the courage or whatever to get up and get into the office. I knew there was something wrong with me, and actually, as many of us do, I started by seeking medical professional helps. You know, my heart was good, my brain was good, all the things were there, and there was nothing physically wrong with me, and that created and maybe just added back into frustration and fear and worry about things. So the doctor started telling me that I was exhibiting all the classical symptoms of what's called generalized anxiety disorder. Did a lot of research, learned more and more, and the more I learned, I actually got to a spot that the more I worried, and I started spinning in this toilet bowl of being alone. Work, family, personal happiness for me actually all started to suffer. I could see it, but I was watching it. I wasn't participating in it. So my fix initially was to ignore it, lower expectations, accept life what it is, and just be happy with being upset, which was not where I wanted to be. And feedback from everybody in my life is that's not, they could see a change but couldn't kind of figure it out. So I started seeing some therapists, trying to understand it. And it's been a long journey for me in context of how I came to sort of get where I am today. And the events that actually got to a point that for me, it was an event actually that helped me turn it around. That was directly related to some people here in the organization.
Thank you, Mike. It's interesting when you're talking about how you notice kind of symptoms for a while, but it wasn't until you started talking to other people that you started to be able to get clarity in terms of what was going on. Judy, I go to you now in terms of your struggles have been more recent, and I wondered if you could share a little bit about that.
Yes, mine were very recent. I ended up taking a leave this summer from May to the end of August, and then kind of worked my way back full-time throughout August and back full-time in September. For me, it just hit me like a brick. I had some conversations with people at work and some feedback, and I was in tears and I couldn't stop crying. I couldn't function. I couldn't think straight. But when I thought about it, afterwards, I immediately talked to my doctor because this was completely foreign to me, and went to some counseling. But when I thought about it later, I realized it had been creeping up on me all along, and I'd been ignoring the symptoms, ignoring the, not being able to sleep at night, and not being able to concentrate on things, and not being able to function and really do my job and focus on anything. So it was a shock for me, I think.
I wonder if we can hear from the others in terms of who were the first people that you spoke to when you suspected you might be having a challenge. Can we go to you, Jennifer?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Peter. I think for me, and just to give everyone a little bit of a background, my story probably started about 18 years ago, but it came to height about 17 years ago when I started at Maple Leaf. I was managing restaurants before then. For those of you who know me, that that I talk about my son a lot. I have a 21-year-old son. I have an excellent relationship with my ex-husband. And really it was about single parenting when I was young because my ex-husband lives far away. When I started at Maple Leaf, I was just ecstatic. I had been managing bars and restaurants before then, and my son was a baby at the time, so I was a single parent, and I had just gotten into a relationship with someone, and that relationship, unfortunately, was highly abusive, both physically and emotionally. So where I come from and the world that I come from, I met my ex-husband in police college, so very male dominated. I have 3 brothers. My father is a police officer, and I was in an environment at work where it was very predominantly male dominated. And I felt I just wanted to be one of the guys. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be strong. I didn't want to be seen as weak. And what had happened was through this process, I was so incredibly proud to be part of Maple Leaf. They invested in me. They put me back through university. I just wanted to knock it out of the ballpark. So I went into a denial, and because I was working at Maple Leaf, it was an entry level role at the beginning. So I was waitressing part time to make ends meet. My partner was out of work most of the time. And I was also doing overtime at the plant and then going to university. And it was a lot. And what had happened was my attendance actually started to suffer. So between exhaustion and, bruises that I couldn't hide or broken bones that I couldn't get up and come to work for, I was probably missing about, on average, 1 day every couple of months. It all came, and this all came to light and all came to a head when my son got very, very sick with a rare form of flesh-eating disease, and then I got sick, so I had to take a week off. And I went to my manager, who I thought was the right person to go to, and I said, okay, this is what's going on. And the response was, I hope it isn't serious because you need to be at work. And that really just shut me down completely, because what I wanted to hear was, are you okay? You're missing work. That's not usual. So that was probably a defining moment for me, 100%, to have that response, because it still weighs on me a little bit now, even where I have a hard time asking for help. And it really, honestly, Peter and Gerb, it didn't come to a head until after I had the courage to leave this person after about 4 years. And I had found out that inadvertently my son had also had an element of abuse happening as well. So as a parent, I felt awful, obviously. And I was going into a spiral where I thought I couldn't return. So I knew about this thing called EAP. I was obviously in human resources, so I knew that it was a really of a program that I was supposed to promote. So I called, and that was probably the defining moment to me, was that I made that attempt. It was for my son at the time, and eventually it was for me. EFAP was amazing. I didn't mesh with a couple of the counselors that I originally spoke to. I didn't feel comfortable, so I just went through a couple of them. After about 3, I got someone that I was very content with, that I was able to really zone in and help with. So I was able to cope with what had happened, but also be able to go back to my leader and say, look, this is how you made me feel. I recognize that I was internalizing everything, and I recognize that I was hiding everything, but the indicator for me would have been that I was missing work, and I would have liked it if you asked if I was okay. And that person really took that feedback really well, which was great. And so, you know, the learning for me, and what I really wanted to hone in on, is that we're not perfect, and we don't always all know how to respond, but there are resources. Find someone that can help. And for EFAP, you know what? Find someone that can help. If you don't mesh, just keep trying until you find that person, because it will ultimately bring you to where you need to be.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jenny. And you've touched on a few different topics that we're going to get into more deeply soon. One is around the different types of treatments available, and it would be looking to in terms of some of the obstacles that people have in their mind or real, in terms of that keep people from actually getting the help. And the other is in terms of making sure that we have kind of an environment where our managers and people we work with understand how to support. So we're going to come back to some of those ideas in a moment. Bindu, I'd like to come to you, and I know your experience has been more recent in terms of even during COVID, and I wondered if you could share a little bit about that.
Absolutely, Peter. Like I think I didn't recognize what was happening to me early on, because just a little bit of background too. We had a bunch of family health issues on both sides of both on my husband's side and my side. So really, after COVID started, we were very busy actually just trying to support other family members through that time. And I started to feel a lot of anxiety and feeling the isolation of COVID, but I really thought that some of that was, you know, because of what was happening with the different health issues across the family. And I think I was looking for help then, but didn't really understand enough of it myself. So as things started to get better in the family situations, I realized that I was not better yet. I spent a lot of time in those first early months caretaking for other people, and not realizing that I was not caretaking for myself. So really the first person I was talking to, and I was talking to him regularly, was my husband, and he was super supportive, but he didn't feel the same way. Like I was used to being in a group of people at work where, you know, you're in a project room all the time, and you're sitting with, you know, it could be 10 people all the time, or even if I'm sitting at my desk, there's people around me all the time. And I think for me, I really needed the physical contact, the physical, like just even seeing people on video. And there was not a lot of that to be had especially in the early months of COVID. And I did actually talk to my manager as well, and you know, at that point I had seen the Inkblot therapy announcement, and man, I honed in on that right away, and ended up signing up. I can talk about that later too. But yeah, for me, it was mostly my husband, and I did end up talking to a few colleagues at work who were super supportive as well. We had a few, maybe, you know, we tried to do things on video just to chat, and we also tried to find some time outside of work, maybe to get together at a coffee shop. Social distancing, of course, but there were just things that I needed to do to help myself feel less alone and less anxious about, you know, the fact that there wasn't really an end to this COVID. And it, after a couple of months, everybody thinks that there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel, or there's going to be better news. It was getting to the point where even the news itself was just really upsetting for me every day.
No, thank you. It's so interesting to hear each of you. And again, I just want to thank you for your openness. But the stories that everyone is bringing is different and is unique to them. And you can see how when we have mental health challenges, it can manifest itself in different ways. Mike, I'd like to go back to you a little bit more in terms of how your challenges showed themselves at work. And if there's anything that you'd want to share on that front.
Yeah, at work, actually, for me, and it continues to this day, right? So I can say I'm better, or the way I say it, I'm happier because I recognize I deserve to be happy at times, but I am. But a lot of it actually was work related, and I had, it would resonate more at work than it would at home. There would be times when I was disengaged. There are times when actually I find I was procrastinating or holding back on important issues, or even just starting issues starting tasks that I needed to get going, and I couldn't get that over. But at times, actually, it got to the point where actually I had full blown out panic attacks in the office, where I had to escape. A couple of times over the last 10 years, actually hit emergency, right, thinking something worse was going on. But it wasn't just behavior or mind. It manifested itself actually in physical things while at work.
Yeah. Anyone else want to comment at all in terms of building on how we've heard from Jenny, what we've heard from Mike? Anything else to add at all before we move on? Okay, because one of the things that I'd like to touch on is sometimes there's a stigma or a fear about actually disclosing a mental health challenge at work. And does anyone have an experience? Jenny, you've touched on one, and I'm very, very thankful that you said the person was responsive, and congratulations to you and the courage to go back and give them the feedback, because I'm sure that certainly wasn't their intent. But I think it's amazing that you closed the loop with them and gave them that information. It's critical. But did anyone else have a story in terms of, or insight they'd want to share in terms of what might have impacted their ability to be able to disclose or talk about some of their challenges while they're at work?
Peter, I can at least share, right? I was so worried actually from my people and my leaders and the folks around us, so afraid to actually be showing weakness on this. The first time I had a major panic attack, I was actually working in IS many years ago. Didn't know it was a panic attack, thought I was having a heart attack. So I did what every smart person does when they think they're having a heart attack. I got in my car and I drove to the hospital, which was insane. I don't have memory of actually getting there. The crap that I got walking into emergency, you walked in, so obviously you're not having an issue. And then by the time they, hooked everything up and the rest of the stuff, right? This idea that I don't want anyone to know. Right, and you need to tell me if there's anything wrong, because I need to hurry up and get back. Don't call and tell my wife until I know what's going on. Right, I was hiding from everyone, and yet I'm lying in hospital with an EKG and an IV and all the rest of the stuff, and nobody knew where I was, and was so fearful of actually being seen in this sense that I wouldn't even provide them initially like an emergency contact until I knew what the issue was. So not too smart.
Yeah, no, it is incredible though when you look in terms of the power of fear to cause us to close up and not share more. I'd like to look in terms of kind of changing gears a bit and talk about what are some of the more helpful things that you've seen people do within the organization that actually helped you move forward. And I said within the organization, but could be people certainly outside of the organization too. So I think I'm first, Judy, can I go to you?
Sure. I was terrified to admit that anything was even wrong, but and I thought I was going to be judged when I've come back, but I think I was very surprised and very pleased about how everybody was very receptive and welcoming and telling me they were really glad to see me back. So that was very helpful. And my family has been very supportive too. Quite surprisingly, my husband was a lot more supportive than I thought he would be because he's a kind of a grumpy old guy, and it was very, very good. So, but definitely, I would say even my boss has been probably a huge support for me because she has encouraged me not to rush into things and don't rush back and do the graduated return, and that was very helpful too.
Excellent. And it's always nice when our partner surprises us, being better than we expected. And I'm sure they'd love it if we could say that they could say the same about us. So no, it's great. Bindu, anything you'd want to add in terms of looking at what's been helpful for you?
So actually, the first thing was really like I had been talking to my husband, who was very helpful, and various people around me. But really, when I saw the therapy note that was from Inkblot, there was just a feeling that I thought, wow, it's free, it's there. I'm gonna I'm gonna try this. It's not gonna there's nothing to lose here, and that was really good to get me kind of on track. But I did start to open up to some more colleagues, and it was nice because in sharing with them, they also opened up and shared with me. And I think that's really kind of the key here, is that, if you can have the courage to share your experience, then you'll probably find that people are feeling the same way in many cases. And for me, like coming on here, like there's a huge amount of stigma around, in my culture, um, in my community, to share this kind of information, or to admit to having some kind of mental health issue. And I have to say that if it helps anybody out there, that that I am speaking from the heart, I'm speaking very honestly, and it is very much a cultural stigma for us as well. That if it helps anybody, absolutely, like I'm happy to talk to people as well, to talk to people directly. It was so reassuring when you talk to people, that I thought, my problems were smaller, because so many people had issues with the work from home and dealing with the kids. I just felt like, wow, that must be so much harder than what I'm facing. But the struggle, I think, was still very much the same, but in different ways. Everybody's still feeling it, and there's different things that are impacting us. But having colleagues who are willing to listen, and having a family support system that's willing to listen, as well as a therapist who helps guide the way that I'm thinking about it. So those are all good things.
So you've touched on Inkblot, and I'm going to change gears in terms of talking about some different treatment modalities and things people have done that have been helpful. Often people who haven't been in therapy before or sought help, it can be a big obstacle, and they can have a lot of misconceptions and even fear to be able to say, how do I enter into this type of engagement? What will it be like? And will it work for me? I'm going to start with you, Bindu, because you brought it up in terms of Inkblot. Could you just give, to help even educate the people who are joining us today, just a really quick summary in terms of like how did you access it, and what were some of your initial first experiences? And then, folks, I'm going to come back to the rest of you and get some ideas too.
So as soon as I saw the email, like I debated on filing it away. I thought, if I don't do this right now, I better sign up right now. So I did that, and really, when you get to the link, there's a questionnaire for you. So they do try to help you choose sort of the best type of therapy that's good for you, and you can follow the questionnaire, and hopefully you get somebody that you really like, or that you like their approach. Let's say that instead, and it's very easy, however, you can try a few different therapists, and if you are not comfortable with the approach, you can always choose another one. There's no reason why you can't. The number of hours that you get are significant. So as I said, it doesn't even touch your normal insurance. When you log into Inkblot, there'll be kind of like a little bit of a timer that sets. So you get 600 minutes free. That's 10 sessions of an hour, and honestly, like, I think it's really hard to get that kind of stuff free anywhere. So that's on top of your regular insurance. And I have to say that my experience so far has been really, really positive. I had probably 3 sessions so far, and I'm working through a couple of different issues with my therapist, and it's really helping me. It's helping me to realize that, you know, it's not a problem that I have that's not insurmountable. Like I can work through this, and I can really help myself become more self-aware of my emotions and reactions to things.
Yeah, no, thank you. It was interesting. I was talking with a friend of mine who's a psychologist on the weekend, and actually we were face to face in her backyard, social distancing. And when I saw her, she is an old school psychologist in terms of she's been in therapy and doing therapy for many years. I used to work with her at the hospital, and she was adamant that therapy the way we're talking online now, and she really believed in the essential element of you know, close physical proximity. And now during COVID, she's had to change her route, and it's interesting. She's actually, when I pushed her on it, she's thinking of not actually renewing her lease. So she's been very surprised in terms of how effective online and technological supports can be. And so if you're considering any of these, I'd ask you, don't let COVID or you know, the struggles that we have now prevent you from actually getting help. It doesn't have to be done in an office in the way that you're thinking. I wonder if we can hear from anybody else, though, in terms of just giving a little bit of an overview of something you've tried and any thoughts that you might want to share with others.
I can go, Peter. So one of the things I can talk about, so EFAP, as I spoke about before, which has been fantastic for both my son and I, but also just these forums and peer support. And that's in-house. So coping mechanisms are interesting. I mean, I work out, I go to kickboxing, I dance, I do all of these things, but it doesn't actually help me when I'm at work, if I'm having a moment or anything. And so having these calls, I can say that you know, where Ian Henry shared his story and Lucas shared his, and we had those panels and we have these let's talk about race sessions. They are so helpful for a person that's not used to communicating. So this is the first time I've ever shared this at work at all, and it's a work experience that I'm sharing. It affected me at work. So having that peer support was extremely helpful. You know, having a leader that truly cares about having true time off and taking care of your well-being is extremely important. And I think for me, it's really being able to say, it's okay if you're not comfortable talking about it. Can we talk to someone else? Like, we have peer supports out there. We have a community of people that want to help. And I know we're working through a new program for that, Peter, as well, which is great. But just knowing that there are people, it doesn't always have to be, you can't always get someone on the phone all of the time. There's people around you that can help. You just have to kind of feel comfortable enough to say something.
Okay, thank you. Judy or Mike, anything to add?
I can add. I'm going to an in-person counseling. I guess I could have tried the online stuff, but I just felt like I needed to talk to somebody and actually be able to see him. The counselor I found, he's a young guy, so you know, I'm really comfortable with him, and I was comfortable with him the moment I sat down with him. So I've stuck with him. I'm also on medication, and I'm not ashamed now to admit it. And then maybe I would have been at the start of it, but you know, whatever it takes, I want to feel better. So I went for it, and I gave my doctor feedback. No, this isn't working. So the dose changed a few times. The medication changed a few times, and it's been well worth it. I don't regret it now at all.
Thank you so much. Mike.
You know, I'd say this, Peter. Probably, you know, for many of us, that the hardest part is taking that first step, right? Or feeling different. Having lived with this now for a number of years, and most folks who work with me know my story already, right? This is actually pretty normal, right? Certainly this year, we're all going through it. If you think you haven't been affected, you maybe should talk to someone. We've all been affected in some way, right? But you know, for me, actually, what's been incredible is actually the support that's come from the organization, and maybe by telling, you know, my own story here with others. We all go through it, right? As a leader in the organization, I'll put my hand up to say, look, I'm going through it. Judy, I'm on meds too. They have bad side effects, but it works, right? And probably the key thing is I've learned through a number of the things in the therapy. For me, the most important thing is to actually, my own self-talk. That talking to someone else actually defeats my own self-talk that says they're a problem. Someone's actually talking back to me. The medication gives me an opportunity to actually listen to it. And the support to the senior leadership in the organization, in particular, that, listen, we're not the only ones going through it. This is actually quite normal. Josh is on the line with us too. Josh and I have been talking about this for 6 years. Sometimes we just look at each other and kind of going, bad day, good day. That moment of actually just someone else is going through it, it's like, okay, I have permission to continue to work on it. It's okay. The support that I've had over the years from other leaders, and there was actually other leaders in the organization, 2 senior leaders that aren't here with us anymore, who looked at me one day and said, you've got a problem, and explained to me, here's what they do, right? And they pulled out the little pill Monday to Friday and all the things they're doing to take care of it and all the issues. That this is actually, for many of us, this is a normal part of life, right? And as we grow older, male and female, the chemicals change, things happen. There's biochemical issues that are here. If someone told us, Peter, like you had diabetes, I don't think any of us would actually fear I got to take insulin every day. And that's the way I've kind of looked at it is, I don't have diabetes. I've got this other biochemical thing going on where I need to take some stuff and work on it and find some, and it just brings actually a better chance of happiness. So my advice is take the first step. And, in this discussion to us, it's actually quite normal in our organization. It isn't probably the first thing we talk about, but for many of us, and in my team and others, it's not something that's taboo, right? So hopefully at least us speaking to it, maybe we can give at least one other person here, the confidence to take that first step.
So I love what you guys are saying in terms of how, and I think it's CAMH says, mental health is health. And it's just so important that we look at treatment of our mind the way we would for a broken arm, like you said, diabetes or any other ailment that we have. And it takes a while, I think, for society and for others to kind of accept that, but it's so important that we are able to help people to understand that more. So thank you for that. Judy, I mean, a number of you've touched on the idea that there isn't one approach in terms of it's not always a straight line in terms of getting help and the help that works for you. Bindu, you were saying with Inkblot, you could talk to different therapists and they'll help you get the right one. Judy, you had quick chemistry with a therapist and it worked well, but you had to do some changes with medication. And so I think in kind of true Maple Leaf fashion, the importance of jumping in and taking action in the right direction is really important. And then you're able to kind of fine tune it where you need to. And so I thank you that you guys did this. You've commented on the way, though, that the organization has changed over time, and we're not fully there yet. And I wondered, is there anything kind of within the organization that you would like to see more of, that you think would move us in the direction where there would be greater inclusion and maybe greater health so that we could support each other more? So it's a broad question, but is there anything on your mind in terms of what you'd like to see more of so that we can move forward as a company?
I think having forums like this, Peter, is a good start. We all know this is a massive umbrella. And I remember when you first joined, Peter, and this whole mental health thing came out, I'm like, thank goodness we finally are seeing something, and just seeing the word, oh my gosh, like this is a blind, these things are often blind. You don't see any of this. So to just draw attention to it was step number one. I think these forums are really, really good. Continuing to communicate right down to our hourly folks on the ground and finding all of these supports. And I mean, Inkblot is amazing. We have to keep promoting it, keep repetitive, because people forget if they don't utilize it. And honestly, it's just these communications and these stories, I think it really helps people to be able to overcome some of what they're feeling. Don't stop. We have to keep moving forward and keep trying, and it's going to be trial and error, and that's okay. If we include some people, if we include people from all levels of the organization to help you along the way, I think we're just going to keep going and moving in the right direction.
I would just wanted to add to that. So if the emails had come out probably more often, or if they had come out religiously, kind of like, I think maybe the first couple of times people may have just, park them or set them aside, or people are busy doing other things. But sometimes it's that third or fourth time that finally you just say, hey, I'm going to do this now. I'm going to try to log in and sign up for this. So I think you're right, just hitting everybody in the face with it several times and in different ways, so people can see and know that it's right kind of at their fingertips to go and access this information and the resources.
So we're going to open it up to questions in a moment, and folks, a reminder again, click on, we've got a number of questions already. If you have any, please use the ask button. But before we go to that, just want to check in terms of, are there any misconceptions about mental health that you'd like to kind of address? And is there any advice that you'd have for anyone else who might be struggling right now? And Judy, can I go to you?
Well, for me, I always thought, hey, this is never going to happen to me. I was always, I'm in my 50s. I'd never had an issue before, and I'd gone through a lot before. I was divorced in my 20s. I had a lot of financial issues in my 40s. With no problems, lost both my parents in my 40s, no problems, and then all of a sudden, I can't even function. I can't even stop crying or get up in the morning. And why did this happen to me? And now I'm starting to realize that, I've been kind of suppressing it all along, and it's probably a combination of all of that stuff in my life that I'd been ignoring and putting off. So misconception for me would be, it can happen to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else?
Peter, yeah, I might add, there's this element that somehow it's abnormal, right? Or that there's really something wrong, right? It's not. And actually, Judy, I love the way you say this. We all go through some of these things, right? It's a question of where are we in time to be able to cope with some of these things, and that sometimes, and it can happen at any point, the internal coping mechanisms need help. That help could come in the form of advice or coaching or, right, a number of areas, but it's actually quite normal, right? We all wake up. We could all lose 5 pounds. We could all, there's always a tune-up that's required across this stuff. And I think that stigma of it somehow being, right, even the name, mental health somehow implies mental illness. It's not an illness in the sense that you're sick. It's just, like losing 5 pounds. There's an element that says you should address it because we're all going to go through some element of it. Right, and those of us that kind of go through it, right, there's a sense of humor around some of the things that are there, but this stigma of it being abnormal or an illness, right, at least in my mind, once you can kind of get past that, and if we can, at least recognize there's a normality actually that we have to tune our emotional and mental health. And I think all of us being raised here in our cultures or wherever, it's not something we were taught. It's not something that, you've got a thermometer on and you're checking. You don't get on a scale to evaluate the EQ, IQ every day. But there are ways to actually make it a priority for us. I think just making it as part of normal would be helpful for most of us.
Yeah, thank you. So folks, we're going to go to questions in a moment. Josh, any comments before we go to the broader questions at all?
I have a bunch running through my mind, Peter. I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to share a couple of the things. I hesitate. I'm hesitating in my words a little bit because when people tell me how to feel, it's one of the most frustrating aspects of my life. Nobody can really tell me that they know how I feel, and when they tell me this is the way you should feel, I find that incredibly stressful. So I don't want to share. I'm avoiding using words like that here. What I'd like to say, though, to everybody that's on the call and the panel as well, is I'd say a couple things. I'd say with mental health and with all forms of stress, a key element here is uncertainty. It's uncertainty about how to feel. It's uncertainty about what's happening. It's uncertainty about what to do. It's uncertainty about what the implications of how you're feeling, or what the implications of how you're feeling are going to have at home and at work. Like, there's so much uncertainty that comes with that. And if there's one thing I could try to do to help as I listen here, is to tell you one thing that I'm certain of. This isn't how you should feel, but I'm certain of it. And I'm certain that you can be helped, because that's happened for me. I'm certain that there are ways to get help through our organization. And I'm certain that people in our organization, starting from the top, because I've been very fortunate to see that personally through the entire organization, care. Those are three things that I am bet my mortgage certain about. And what I share is, if you don't feel that certainty and you don't see those things, that's okay. You don't need to accept it. There's a link on the homepage that's a SharePoint link that takes us right to a mental health support site that the team has set up. That's incredibly powerful. I've used it personally. And there's many colleagues, like you're hearing on this panel today, that do care and will help. So for all of that said, I just really wanted to reinforce for people before we do turn it over to the group that please don't sit and feel like you're alone. Even when you've heard these examples where there's cases where that is the case, it is an outcome. It doesn't need to be the permanent outcome. And if all that doesn't lead to help for you, please, I'm here and wanting to help. Please don't hesitate to contact me if it comes to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Josh. So folks, we're going to go to some of the questions now, and appreciate what you've already said, and we'll get to as many as we can. I want the panel to know you are superstars in people's minds, and I wish you could see the screen in terms of all the thanks and how brave and courageous, how meaningful this is. So please hear that. One of the questions,
Peter, you have access to our pad, so we look forward to seeing that there.
That's right. I can't say a direct correlation, but it's certainly good. So when you're looking here, though, here's a question that someone has. It says, "What would you like from a coworker?" And so people have talked about how it impacted them here, and it says, "What would you have liked from a coworker that would have helped you?" So who wants to start that one?
That's a great question. I'm trying to think, and knowing that the impact of what's happened has impacted my whole life. Like I'm not over some of the things that happen. And I think that as a coworker, I think if you know your people and if you know each other and you see a sign, maybe just ask, is everything okay? It's really as simple as that. And don't judge or make assumptions. Just ask a question, because generally speaking, that'll open up something, and it may show that person that you're willing to listen, or that they need some help.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I would say just listening. If somebody is starting to share something, just listen. There's probably not a lot you can do specifically because you don't understand what they're going through, but listening, I think, helps a lot. It's the first thing that you need, is somebody to hear you, and somebody to try to understand how you're feeling.
There's questions here in terms of looking at what was the impact when you did, tell others, and when you did speak to your manager. So there's a question here in terms of, if anyone wants to share, how did your manager respond when they found out about your struggles? Anyone want to comment on that?
Sure, I can comment again. It was very positive for me. Like it was something I've been discussing, actually, not just once, but several times. And I kind of already knew all the resources we had, but she shared that with me again, and just super supportive. And what do I need? How, what is the support that I require? And if it's time, or is it just the resources, or what is it?
Excellent. And folks, so we are starting now, and I think we've had 150 people go through it so far, but we're having mandatory training for all people leaders in the organization. And so like I said, we've started already, and over the next months we'll be completing that. It's top-notch training. It's done by the same people who trained for Bell Let's Talk, and it's led by Morneau Chappelle. And so if you're a people leader, when you see that invite, I encourage you to attend, besides it being mandatory, and it'll give you some other advice in terms of what you can do to be supportive. There is a question here in terms of looking at how people have actually kind of coped during these times. And the question is, with the isolation we've faced during the past several months, how have you dealt with the separation between work and life? And so I think it's a question in terms of like, are things impacting you? Is it more difficult now at this time even than in the past?
I think for me, Peter, that's an interesting question because I actually had a conversation with my leader not that long ago about how I was feeling in terms of I'm single, I'm at home, I live in an apartment with a dog, and I'm used to being around people. So it was very, very difficult, and that anxiety definitely built in. And what was really great was he listened, and we just really separated, okay, what am I actually feeling and what are some different ways we can get past that. He knows that video calls are important to me because I need to see people because I'm used to being around people, and making sure that we have one of those, making sure that we have some touch bases, and if there's an opportunity to have a meeting to listen and keep going. But it's tough. It's definitely very tough. You know, being home by myself, I tend to work more, and he recognizes that. So, you know, when I'm working until 1 o'clock in the morning, he's like, okay, enough already. Like that's an indicator, and we need to make sure that the work-life balance is there. So I find that I actually work even more now because I am home and there's nothing really else to do because I'm here by myself. So just having that discussion and really honing in on how to separate that and make sure that we're staying healthy.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. Anyone else?
For me, Peter, it's, you know, my daily life would have been very diverse, walking between meeting rooms, going back and forth, 5 minutes between sessions, passing by workstations and saying hi to people. I desperately miss my team members, right? I miss the interaction day to day. You know, the video calls and the voice and that stuff are kind of helpful, but it's hard to focus on individuals and team meetings, right? Where you get that sort of 2 minutes. So I miss those things. But I found early on I was sitting in the same chair all day long. So part of what I do is I mimic the moving around. I move all around my house. I'll take this meeting here, I go here, I create a routine where I do the same sort of things. But I'm like faking out and adding diversity into the day, just to create this. I'm looking forward to actually sitting outside this afternoon, or okay, tomorrow I'll be doing this. But it's creating new routines, which I think we're all trying to do, and not accepting actually just sitting in the same chair all day long, right? So it's, you know, it's adapting, but at the same time sort of forcing some creativity around some different things.
So there's a question here. So again, many thank yous. And the question is, I just want to know how it felt the first time you opened up to someone, family or otherwise, about your situation. Did that jump start a healing process immediately? Yeah. So I see lots of hands moving, but if you can expand. So Judy, can I go to you first?
The first time I opened up to somebody, it was my husband. It was over the phone. He was in the car, and my 13-year-old daughter was in the car too. So it scared her. She's struggling with issues of her own, but I know it really scared her, and because I was crying and I was barely, you know, he could barely understand what I was saying, and he tried to calm me down, but she was scared. She told me later she's afraid to come to me with her problems because she thinks that I can't deal with her, I can't help her because of my own. So I've had to, you know, tell her that I'm here for her, but just need my own issues too.
And how did you move? I don't want to go too much on it, but how did you move through that?
Well, my husband, first thing, okay, you need to phone the doctor. I've been with the same doctor for 30 years, so that was okay. She knew me. She knew it was, you know, something new, and helped me out right away. And since our daughter has been struggling, she was actually on her way home or on her way to a therapy appointment of her own, and he talked at the therapist, okay, who have you got to help my wife? And I was set up the next day with talking to somebody in person. So he helped, but at the time it sure didn't feel like I was getting anywhere. I was just a basket case.
Yeah. I think it's so important what you're highlighting, though, Judy, is that, again, one of the themes is the idea of keep moving forward. And even though these challenges come along the way, moving forward in terms of getting the support you need. I'm going to take one more question, and then I want to spend some time talking about some of the resources that we have available. So this question is saying, what can an employee do when their one-up does not show empathy or willingness to support their mental health issues? So it's a tough one. So it sounds like the person tried, and they're saying that they're a bit of a roadblock. Any advice for the person?
Maybe I can take that, Peter. To anyone in the organization that's facing that, we are a leadership team, right? So you're not alone with a one-up. There are 2-ups, 3-ups, HR resources, and leaders across the organization. Josh has put his hand up. I put my hand up there as well. You never know, right? Individuals, including your one-up, could be facing their own issues, and you bringing things forward could be triggering something with them, right? Have a moment of don't immediately get upset. Reach out to a human resources person that you're dealing with. Find another colleague or another individual, because those initial responses are not necessarily an element of, don't interpret it to be a negative element that I don't support you. It could be something else. Reach out and find another support group, right? We're all at different points in understanding and what those are. And I would say, don't give up on the first step. In fact, if anything else, you've taken the first step, take the next step. It's not a poor reflection on your leader if you have to go to a 2-up or to someone else. If anything else, it's actually helping that 1-up as well to be able to sort of cope and deal with whatever it is you might be facing.
Perfect, thank you. If we can advance the slide to the resources, please, Sean. Now, folks, you've heard a number of people mentioning in terms of the different resources that we have available. And sometimes, like we say, the biggest obstacle can be in terms of where do I find it? And so we have on the slide now in terms of where you can find it on the SharePoint. If you can go to the next slide, you can just go to My LMLF, and if you can click on the People Services, and you can see here, you can click on the Mental Health Resources site. When you go and click on that, so next slide, please. What you'll find is a list of all of the different resources that we have. Josh, thank you for the plug that it's pretty easy to navigate. We've tried to make it that way. If you have feedback that it's not, we're very, very open to the voice of the customer and what we should change. But we believe we've got something here that will be able to help you to find the resources that you need. And as a reminder, some of the resources that we have, if you're considering just exploring and saying, I'm not even ready yet to talk to someone, but I wonder if I might need to talk to someone, I'd encourage you to consider cognitive behavioral therapy. It's called CBT, and what we offer is through Beacon. You can view it almost as a digital workbook. So what they do is you go through the process similar to Inkblot in the way what Bindu described, but it allows you to do work and explore on your own. And we received just an amazing letter the other day from a Maple Leaf employee who used Inkblot, and it made my eyes water as the person said it saved their life. And so this type of resource can be very helpful and allows you to work independently. The other resources we have is Inkblot, which is just online therapy. You see a real therapist on the screen in front of you. You can do it. We all have flexibility now, so you can do it at any time that works for you and them and set it up. We have EFAP, which Jenny described. And EFAP, I would describe as very supportive work. And from a counseling's perspective, though, it's most effective when you have an acute issue. So something that you think has come up very quickly and you're thinking it's probably not long-standing, EFAP would be the first place that I would go. And then, of course, the other one, Judy's described it, I think others have touched on it, is face-to-face therapy. Maple Leaf has increased the support that we give for people to select their own counselor. We've expanded the definitions in terms of seeing a social worker or other types of professionals, and we provide support there. So you can go to the site and find what's available, and you can also, of course, speak to your HR rep who would be very helpful to walk you through this. We're coming towards the end of our time, and I would just like to thank the panel again. I say we have lots of thank yous that people have written in, but this is the first time that we've done this at Maple Leaf, and so a big hug, a big applause, a heart. My mom does this now when she can't see me face to face, and so big hearts to each of you, and I'd like to thank everyone who joined in today. You've spent your busy day and spent time now to be here today. I hope it's been an encouragement to you. I know I feel inspired, and we look forward to connecting again. So enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you all again.